Hey, everybody, it's Ryan. Thanks for downloading today's show. And just a reminder, as always, Wake Up War Chant is brought to you by our friends at For the Table, Madison Social, Central and Township, in the heart of College Town. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, from Tallahassee to Thomasville and from coast to Atlantic coast, it's time to Wake Up War Chant here on 97.9 ESPN Radio, and it's a very happy Thursday morning, September 28th, 2017 to you and yours. You're currently listening to the voice of Ryan Kelly. I'm the director of digital media at warchant.com. No Drew Hicken today. Mr. Drew, of course, had an exam today, so we figured we'd give him a little bit of time to study up, make sure that he's making the grades there. So it's just me today, but I shouldn't say just me because we actually do have a pretty star-studded cast coming in here today. As a matter of fact, next segment, I'm going to be joined by Kelly Quinlan, of course, of DeaconsIllustrated.com, part of the Rivals Network, covers Wake Forest and does a really good job. I'm able to ask him about that program and the questions that surround a team that's 4-0, but really hasn't beaten anybody all that impressive. So we're going to get to that. We're going to get to Michael Langston, and we're going to get some recruiting updates because we haven't really talked to Michael. God, it's probably been about a month and a half since we've been able to chit-chat with him. So we have extended conversations with both of them coming up today. But, of course, before we get into that, before we get into what we're leading off with, thanks so much for waking up with us here at 6 a.m. on 97.9 ESPN Radio, or, of course, streaming on your mobile device, the TuneIn Radio app, and our own WTSM app, which we certainly do appreciate when you download that from the App Store. And we also appreciate when you listen to the podcast on iTunes, Podcast Republic, warchantradio.com, YouTube, however it is, you can go down the line. However, whenever, we appreciate you doing that. Radio at warchant.com. There's your email address. Comments, questions, concerns, they all go right there. And, of course, at Wake Up War Chant, your Twitter account, to do that as well. Finally, we can't do this without our friends at For the Table, Madison Social, Central Township, all right there in the heart of College Town. It's the best happy hour in town, ladies and gentlemen, 4 to 7 every day at all three of those different places. It's 3 different experiences with the same great deal. Great place to get ready for some Thursday night football tonight. And, of course, just getting ready for another great weekend. We're really hitting our stride into football season now, even though Florida State's only getting ready to play game number 3. And speaking of game number 3, it's going to be a big one to see how that offense starts to piece back together. I am very fascinated by this. Very fascinated by this. And I know you are too, because we don't know what to think of this offense at all. We don't know if Auden Tate's going to play yet. I would imagine that we're going to get ourselves a big new update on him sometime today, with Jimbo Fisher, of course, addressing the media and giving his injury report as he usually does on Thursday. But what is there with this passing game? It was very clear last week that James Blackman had the most trust with Auden, but outside of that, Nooney Murray was inconsistent. And that's a problem when you have a new quarterback that you're hoping to lean on. The one good news, though, George Campbell, who really kind of peered above what you thought his expectations were, and you finally got to see him going. Of course, a lot of that is due to his health, and he's finally healthy. He's finally ready to go, and he ended up with 3 catches, 85 yards. Of course, it ends up being in a loss, but it's good to see that he's a part of the offense. It's good to see that he's finally in that mix for wide receiver, because he was a guy who, through no fault of his own, you just kind of started to wonder, is this finally going to click for him? Is this finally going to get together? And our own Ryan Clark has a great story on warchant.com right now about, well, maybe this is the time that he can break out. Maybe this is the time that he can roll. Of course, he spoke with reporters a little earlier this week and said, quote, "I feel like I played a decent game. I had some mistakes throughout the game. That cancels out the big plays in my eyes. A lot of people only see the plays when you make them. I had little mistakes in there, but I feel like I played a decent game." And that's the good news, is that you have a guy who knows that he can get better, and you need a guy like him to get better when you're still having an inexperienced quarterback under center. Of course, it's not just the passing game that you're kind of looking and you're scratching your head at. It's that running game as well. And I think we're getting to that point where we're going to know over these next 2 games, especially at the end of Miami, but I think we're going to have a good idea at the end of Wake Forest, This is a very experienced front seven, but it's not as good as the two front sevens that you've played to start this year. I mean, Alabama and NC State are in a very elite class when it comes to front sevens and when it comes to shutting down the run. I'm curious to see what this running game looks like. First of all, I'm hoping that it doesn't get abandoned the way that it kind of seems like it was on Saturday against NC State and then even earlier against Alabama. I get Alabama more because, you fell behind, not through the fault of your offense at all, through, of course, those special teams blunders, and you had to air it out. And plus, you had an experienced quarterback to sling it at that time, and now you don't. Now you need to rely on those guys a little bit more. And, of course, I just want to see how this shakes out. I want to see if they bring Cam Akers along sooner rather than later, because I think it's getting to that point where we know what Jacquez Patrick is. And that's nothing against Jacquez Patrick because he is a perfectly serviceable running back, but I don't think he's quite the home run threat that you need now that you have a freshman quarterback. You need a guy who can provide a knockout blow in the backfield again to carry the weight. And let's face it, throughout the quarterback uncertainty that Florida State's had over the last couple of years, the reason that offense was still great is because, number 4, old Dalvin Cook, who's of course running for the Minnesota Vikings now, was a great home run threat. And Florida State lacks that in that running game right now until they start bringing Cam Akers along. And that's where I think it's so important to get him going. That's where I think it's so important to get him invested and ready to roll in that offense, because you need that guy again. I'm not saying Cam Akers is going to be that on Saturday, because quite frankly, I don't even know how many touches he gets. But I think you need to prepare him because it's very clear that he's going to be that guy in the future for you that steps up, is able to break one. I mean, we've seen it a couple times in the first 2 games that they've played anyway. Just a couple steps away, just a shoestring away from busting off that big run and getting that big play potential. They need more big play potency, especially with the status of Auden Tate still up in the air. I think Cam Akers can be that guy. Maybe not exactly right now, but later on in the year. And that's why the more touches you feed him now, the better. The better he gets with time, the more the game in college starts to slow down for him. And, of course, you're still going to need Jacquez Patrick. Don't make – this doesn't mean that you're just going away from him. This doesn't mean that he's just away and that he's done. He has his role, and he has his purpose, and he is a punisher when it comes to especially teams that have already been worn down. You need that guy. You're going to need that guy. He doesn't shy away from contact. He welcomes it and he initiates it. But that's not always the thing you need when you need a home run threat. So I'm curious to see just exactly what the DNA of this offense is going to look like in just a few short hours. I mean, just a little over 48, 72, somewhere in that ballpark, a 3:30 kickoff against the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, and finally get an idea of what the DNA of this offense is. And that's actually something our friend Kelly Quinlan from Deacons Illustrated, you're going to hear that interview in just 1 second, talks about as well. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's not just that. There's plenty of baseball to get you caught up with pennant races in the air. This is While You Were Sleeping.
Hello. Good morning.
Wake up! Wake up!
Wake me up.
Good morning. Good morning.
What happened last night?
First of all, congratulations to the Cubbies, who clinched their second straight National League Central title yesterday. And by the way, they did it on their arch rivals Diamond. That's, of course, the St. Louis Cardinals. 5-1, the final score for the Cubbies in that game over St. Louis. Not the only game in action, though, of course. Pittsburgh defeats the Orioles at PNC 5-3. The Dodgers all over the Padres last night. Astros win 12-2 over the Rangers in Arlington. It's 15-9. That's one heck of a game between the Colorado Rockies and the Marlins. Colorado victorious at home. The A's defeat the Mariners 6-5 in Oakland. The Diamondbacks 4-3 over the San Francisco Giants in Phoenix. Already mentioned the Cubbies. The Yankees 6-1 over the Tampa Bay Rays. The Phillies 7-5 over the Nationals in Philadelphia. Red Sox get it done at home at Fenway 10-7 over the Toronto Blue Jays. The Tribe defeats the Minnesota Twins 4-2 at Progressive Field. The Mets get the best of the Atlanta Braves 7-1 in New York. White Sox over Anaheim in Chicago 6-4 on the South Side. 6-0. That's the Reds on the road against the Milwaukee Brewers. The Tigers fall again. Yeah, again. To the Kansas City Royals, 7-2. 888-284. When we come back, I told you, we've got plenty of Wake Forest chatter for you. We've got plenty of recruiting chatter for you. But when we come back, it's our friend Kelly Quinlan from DeaconsIllustrated.com on Wake Up War Chant, 97.9 ESPN Radio. Plenty of talk this week about the 0-2 Seminoles on Wake Up War Chant 97.9 ESPN Radio. But, as you may or may not know, Wake Forest is 4-0. Wake and Duke, 4-0, both in the same year for the first time ever. And even predating the ACC. And, that's a pretty good Wake team that's rolling. Well, I should say Florida State will be rolling into next week at BB&T Field. We're going to welcome in Kelly Quinlan of DeaconsIllustrated.com. Does a great job over there. Kelly, how are you?
I'm good. How you doing? I'm
doing just fine, and let's dive straight into this. And that, it took a sec for Dave Clawson's system and his players and his guys to get in. But now, over the last 2-3 seasons, you've really been able to see that progress. You've seen Wake be able to buy in. And every time that I'm at ACC kickoff and I'm around him, I know just from a distance, I'm really impressed with what Wake and what Coach Clawson brings to the table. Why has Wake been rolling so well recently?
I think, basically he took an approach of kind of starting over from scratch. A lot of coaches, they come in, they try to win right away. They try to be as competitive as they can out of the gate. His approach was to go in, redshirt kids, sit them, develop depth, develop a defense, kind of have an identity of the team rather than just taking the best guy, maybe taking the guy who's the best long-term fit for their program, and not cutting corners with a lot of transfers and trying to play JUCO games or any of that stuff. And I think it's really paid off for them.
And, you mentioned it. I know I got a chance when he spoke at ACC kickoff. I believe this was 2 years ago. And he said, I know what it takes to get into Wake. It's a tough school to get guys into. It's a tough school to get guys rolling in. But if I can get those good guys, 3 stars with upside, low 4 stars with upside, and I can coach them up and I can get them and get an experienced senior and junior laden group, I can have a really good football team, and especially on the defensive side of the football, that appears to be what Wake has.
Yeah, I think they kind of have taken the approach of, piecing it together and finding kids that fit kind of their system versus, a lot of guys get caught up in star chasing, and that gets you in kind of a weird situation sometimes. And the guys who are going to be interested in Wake Forest are not guys that are the same kids are being recruited by Florida State or Florida or even North Carolina. It's a different kind of mindset that the kid that wants an academic, wants a different kind of college atmosphere, small town, kind of different, just totally different feel. I mean, there are probably more freshmen in Florida State's class this year than people on the entire campus at Wake Forest. And so it's just a different kind of thing. And it is harder to get into school. And, that's kind of one of the neat things about the ACC. You have schools like, Wake, Duke, Georgia Tech that are kind of these academic schools as sort of the counterpoints to the Florida States and the Clemsons and even Virginia Tech, who are not quite like that. And so you have kind of this cross-section, and it makes it more interesting when some of those teams are good and they play each other. And I think it adds something when you have a weird game like where Wake Forest shuts out Florida State. Like, that's just a whole different animal than kind of what the expectations are. And I think it's cool for the league, and it's part of what makes college football special, because every weekend you can't really necessarily tell what's going to happen when you go out there and watch a game.
Kelly, Wake so far, of course, 4-0, a bunch of teams that they're better than. I mean, you should beat Presbyterian. You should beat Boston College. You should beat Utah State. I know at App State, the Mountaineers were going to treat that like their Super Bowl, and they most certainly did. They took Wake to the wire, but, of course, Wake gets the block at the end, and they win that game 20-19. Again, it's a lot of teams that Wake should take care of business, and they have in a big, bad way. 51-7, 34-10, 46-10. Sometimes when you play teams like that, it's really hard to know what you know for certain about your team. But after a month of the season, what do you know for certain about Wake on field?
they're going to limit their mistakes and try to play the field position game. And when they get a chance to take a couple shots downfield, the offense is a little more competent. It's still not, probably where Dave Clawson wants it, but they're a lot more effective. The passing game's a little bit better. They still have a little bit of trouble running the ball at times, but I think you kind of look at it and they are just really fundamentally sound. They play good defense. They don't put themselves in bad situations, typically getting behind the chains on offense. They try to keep it going and limiting those negative plays. What's really saved them this year is they've been able to avoid a lot of the bad turnovers that kind of haunted them in the past. John Walford's been much better with, keeping the ball, making decisions, getting rid of the football when he needed to, tucking it and running when he needed to. And I think that's made a huge difference for them because really that was kind of the Achilles heel. They would be in a game, and really the last few years they've been in games in the third, fourth quarter and just couldn't put it out. They would make a mistake. Guys would get tired. You'd have one turnover in a bad spot and put the defense in a bad quick change. And they've avoided all of that so far this year. And really the win at Boston College, I think, was kind of emblematic of that. They came on in the third quarter and put them away. And I think that, it'll be interesting to see how things stack up because they had a really gradual increase in terms of the level of competition as the season's gone along versus, playing kind of a mixed schedule. I mean, they're playing, basically their murderer's row in the next 4 games. You have Florida State, at Clemson, at Georgia Tech, and Louisville. And if they can even win 2 of those games, I mean, they're in great shape for the rest of the season.
Absolutely. And, you mentioned John Walford on that offense. It really does seem like all roads kind of run through him. And, of course, senior out of Jacksonville. And I don't know what it is about Wake being able to find great quarterbacks out of Jacksonville, but Walford has been really good for them this season. Of course, Riley Skinner had a great career with the Deacons in the late 2000s. Walford's a guy who just kind of seems like he does it all. He throws it, he runs it, and you mentioned it, has taken care of his mistakes a lot more this season compared to the others. Just how much have you seen him grow, and just how in command is he of this offense this season?
I think that was kind of an interesting thing. He's not the most talented quarterback on the roster from a physical attribute standpoint, but he knows the offense. He knows what to do. He has command of the huddle. He has earned enough trust from, his offense and from Dave Clawson and to take some chances now. And I think that it's just kind of the maturation process of a kid that's been really tough. He's always been very, very tough kid playing through injuries. I mean, he's taken some serious shots over his career, and he's kind of always bounced back and been able to get there. And I think the big thing from this year too is he's been healthy, and that's made a huge difference for them. It gives them some consistency on offense. I think that players kind of around him have responded to the fact that, Clawson made no bones about it. He won the job in camp, and that was it. And there has been no quarterback controversy for the first time in a while in Winston-Salem. And I think that all of those things have kind of culminated in why they're having success on the field right now.
No matter who you are under center, you like to have an offensive weapon as good as Cam Serenier, and he's been great for the Deacs so far this year and throughout his career. I mean, he is a 5-year player. He's a redshirt senior. What is it that makes him so good and has really, honestly, even caught in the eyes of the league? And outside of him, what are the big weapons that, if you're an opposing fan, you're looking against a Wake Forest Demon Deacons team?
So, with Cam, I think the big thing with him is he's just very consistent, whatever role you want to use him in, on the checkdowns, crossing things, or, across the middle of the field, being the safety valve, in a series of progressions for Walford. I think that he just does a nice job of kind of sitting down in his zone, finding his space to make a catch, getting his pads down when he makes that catch. I think he blocks well. I think he has kind of all the physical tools you want, and then he's just a really sharp kid too. And I think that's something that's kind of resonating now with NFL scouts that look at him. You kind of see like, oh, this is a guy that we can coach up, that can absorb a lot and do a lot of different things. Because even if you go look at his touchdown catches from this year, every one of them is pretty much on a different kind of play. Like, they just find a way to get him the ball in space, and I think, that works really well for them. The guy who's really kind of stepped up this year is a redshirt freshman named Greg Dortch. He's kind of their vertical threat in the passing game, and he's also a return guy for them, and just has really dynamic speed. He's been a big play guy for them in most of their games. The running back situation's kind of interesting. Cade Carney's kind of the main guy. Matt Colburn is the other guy, and then they have this kid named Arkeem Byrd, who's kind of a change of pace kid that's young. He comes in, he can really stretch the field and has some kind of home run threat to him. So he's kind of an X factor when you see him come on the field. That gives them kind of a different sort of a weapon and more of the kind of bruising stuff they get from the other two running backs.
Other side of the football with Kelly Quinlan here of Deacons Illustrated. Duke Ejiofor is such a talented defensive end, and he really shores up a front seven that is as experienced as it gets. And, Florida State last week went up against a very experienced front seven at NC State. First game of the year, obviously, going up against the Alabama Crimson Tide. That's 3 straight daunting front sevens, and Wake really does a lot of things solidly. Like, there just doesn't seem to be, at least from an outside observer, a ton of flaws in what they do defensively. What really stands out about that Wake Forest defense?
I think they do a nice job of getting pressure with kind of their base 4 and not really having to bring a lot of extra pressure. And when they do, they're pretty successful. If they send Jabari Williams at linebacker or a corner or safety, those guys tend to really get back into the backfield and disrupt things. I think they're pretty skilled at figuring out kind of when to do that, when to bring that odd pressure. And the big thing, they really do a nice job of kind of shutting the run down and keeping kind of you behind the chains where you're in 2nd and 8, 3rd and 7. You can't get comfortable. You can't really open up your playbook, and you have to kind of get more creative to try to get those first downs. And they're very good at that. And guys tackle pretty well. I think that they're well coached. Mike Elko did a great job when he was here. And then Jay's done a great job replacing him at DC. And you kind of look at it, they just really execute their defense on a high level. And it'll be interesting to see kind of how things play now, because this is kind of a step up in terms of the type of athletes they're going to have to defend versus even a Boston College, or the speed of some of the guys at Florida State is just a little bit different. So that's sort of where I'm curious, like kind of where those guys in the secondary and, how those guys kind of adapt to it. Cameron Glenn's had a really big year for them in the secondary. They have pretty good pieces all around and a lot of returning guys who've played a lot of football. And I think it gets back to the whole theory of Clausen redshirting guys and trying to have upperclassmen play. It makes a huge difference because those guys have been in the system. They're calm. They're not really flustered when they get in the games. They've kind of slowly worked their way up, and there's not a lot of young guys that step in and kind of jump into huge roles.
Kelly, it's kind of opposite ends of the spectrum for Florida State and Wake Forest. Florida State, of course, still looking for its first win on the year. Wake Forest 4-0 on the season. I'm going to ask you the same question I ask anybody who comes on and talks about the opposing team with us for this Saturday. Wake wins if, Wake loses if, and how you think things go down on Saturday.
So I think Wake Forest wins the game if they can avoid turnovers and big plays. I think that Florida State's still struggling to find their offensive identity, and I think that it's an opportunity for them to steal a game against a team that's going to have them kind of outgunned from a physical standpoint in a lot of ways. And, I think what can go wrong for Wake Forest, Walford turns the ball over, they can't get some first downs, the defense spends too much time on the field. Those things they've been able to avoid. They've been able to keep out of the 3-and-out machine that kind of haunted them in the past offensively. Those things are huge questions. At the end of the day, I have a hard time seeing on paper, just the path to victory seems tough for Wake Forest. I just think Florida State, has had some rough luck early in the season. I've gone back and forth with this in my head, and I feel like they're going to probably come out really sharp and give Wake a run for their money, and that's going to be tough because they just haven't faced anyone with those type of athletes yet this year. So I think that Florida State probably wins this one like 31-21.
Kelly, thank you so much. Always appreciate the insight from the other side, my friend. Take care.
Hey, no problem.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have more on the other end. It's Wake Up War Chant, 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Yes, Florida State just landed a 5-star commitment.
I don't see that anywhere online. How did you get that news so fast?
I'm on the new warchant.com app. I get news updates and scores pushed to my phone instantly.
How much does it cost?
It's free. Just go to iTunes or the Google Play Store, type in Warchant, and install it on your phone. That's it.
A free app that keeps me constantly up to date on Florida State sports and recruiting? Wow, that makes it incredibly easy to follow my Seminoles and never miss out.
With the app, you'll also get quick access to all the stories and features on Warchant, including the ever-popular message boards that feature thousands of fans talking about the Noles.
Warchant.com, your ultimate Seminole source.
Been a while since we've been able to have a recruiting update here on Wake Up War Chant 97.9 ESPN Radio, brought to you by your friends at For the Table. But that's why we have our senior recruiting analyst, Mr. Michael Langston, on the phone line. Michael, how are you, my friend? Long time no talk.
Yeah, man, I ain't talked to you in forever. It's been ages. Yeah, I'm doing good, man. Obviously, not a ton of lot going to recruiting, but it's kind of picked up a lot after this weekend, and yeah, I'm doing great.
Yeah, and, well, first of all, I guess in terms of the area, what all high school football have you seen throughout these first, I guess high school's been in for 5-6 weeks now.
Well, I mean, I've been kind of a little bit everywhere. I went to Madison, watched Madison play. They have a 2019 DB, Travis Jay is pretty good, solid player. FSU's already offered him, and went to see them. Then I went to see Lowndes and Valdosta earlier this year, and then I went to see Lowndes again. Just fun. I mean, you haven't been to a Lowndes game. That's a lot of fun. Man, it's
and to me, man, it's amazing. And I know Valdosta lost a lot, but it's amazing to me just how Lowndes was able to work them, and just how it's kind of been a tale of two seasons for those two.
Yeah, Lowndes is pretty loaded. Their defense is really good. They got a nice little athlete. His name is Michael Barrett, not to be confused with the Michael Barrett that played in the Major League Baseball, catcher, but for the Expos. Yeah, I know my baseball stuff. And then, they've got a solid defense. He's a great athlete, plays quarterback, and also plays some defense for him. But it's a fun team to watch. And if you've never seen the Georgia Bridgemen play at halftime, the band for Lowndes is 466 strong. That's bigger than the Marching Chiefs. I mean, they're a fun band to watch. So I just had a blast doing that. And then last weekend I went to see Dennis Briggs, major FSU target, play against Leon, and he was absolutely outstanding. Brad Lawing was there. Rick Trickett was there. It was a lot of fun. Great player. And speaking of Mr. Briggs, he actually got a chance to visit Florida State. Unfortunately for him, though, it was last weekend against the NC State Wolfpack. Yeah, he it was definitely a surprise, and definitely just not the surprise he visited, but surprise on the outcome, and shocking, but not really shocking when you haven't played in 3 weeks. But at the same time, I think Ira and Ryan and Gina pretty much banged all that stuff out as far as the disappointments and stuff like that as far as that game. But overall, though, I mean, here's the thing too. For a preface this, before I talk about Dennis, recruits have a much different view than what fans do when they visit. They see schools, because fans have a lot of emotion into it, where kids, like Dennis and just other prospects, they've been playing football their whole life, and that's not to say that fans don't know football because they haven't played, but they kind of take the emotion out of it. They've gone through the losing. They understand losses happen. And for kids, a lot of kids, when they visit, it's about how do you see yourself fitting there? I mean, are you comfortable there? Is that a place that you could see yourself 4 years as a student? And kids just have a different view of that. But Dennis was he had a blast. I mean, he had a really good visit, and everything seemed to go really well. The only downside was just obviously the result in the game. But from what he saw on the field to, being around the players, coaches, and that feel he has of comfort at FSU is just extremely high. And I think FSU, currently sits in a good spot with him.
And, in reading your article, which, of course, you can get if you're a premium member of warchant.com, of course, Briggs is in town, played Tallahassee Leon, and you already said it, the loss didn't really affect guys all that much in these types of ways. They're just kind of there to see and kind of soak it in. I was a little surprised to see that this staff really didn't talk a ton of football with him until after the game was over.
Yeah, I think they had talked so much with Dennis about, Dennis knows how he's going to be used. Dennis has visited FSU 3 times, maybe 4 of the spring and summer. So they've already banged out all that stuff about how he's going to be used. He's a big defensive end. He can be used some of the same ways as what they see with, last year with DeMarcus Walker. Sometimes you see DeMarcus move inside, sometimes outside. And that's kind of what, in watching his team Gateway, they're from Kissimmee, by the way, they use them the same way. They move them inside sometimes, and they move them outside. So I think that's why he likes the fit so well. It's not going to be a major adjustment for him because he kind of does all those things. So I think they've already banged out all the football stuff, and I think the visit was really just about he hadn't seen a game day atmosphere at FSU yet. He wanted to experience that kind of thing. Obviously, a noon NC State game isn't the best, but still a solid crowd from my perspective of what I saw, and certainly from his perspective, it was really good. And then a lot of it was about just, personal stuff of, getting to know a guy. It wasn't about, all about just, we need to talk football, this and that. It was about, talking about things that is going on in his life and, just his impressions of how he feels about when he's there. And FSU does a very good job of making each visit for each kid very personable. Doesn't have to be football because every place you go is going to talk football. So you have to do something that separates yourself, and that's what separates FSU. A lot of times these visits are very personable, very stuff that people wouldn't talk about too often, very off the field type stuff and out away from football type stuff. And that's part of the reason I think he's so comfortable when he's there.
Of course, he wasn't the only guy to visit this weekend. There's a 4-star linebacker who made his way to Tallahassee as well. Why don't you tell us a little about Dax Hallfield, where he's from, what he does, and, of course, a position that I feel like I say this every year, Michael, a huge position of need and depth, and that's linebacker.
Yeah, Dax was originally going to take an official for the Miami game, and obviously that game got canceled, so he kind of had to rearrange his schedule. NC State game, worked out the best for him where he could go see him. And a lot of times people are like, oh, man, you want all the big-time recruits and, for the big game like Miami or Florida. But a lot of times when you got a recruit like Dax or Dennis, you get more out of it when you play a team, like NC State or somewhere where they can spend quality time. There's not as many guys there. And I think that's what happened with Dax. It was like the perfect weekend because, except for the result, it was a perfect weekend of getting everything done that you wanted to do. Dax had a blast. He even told me we got an interview coming up on War Chant. It's going to be really good. He was just blown away again by the visit and said he got to Sunday and you only get 48 hours for an official visit. And he said he didn't want to leave. He's like he wanted to stay longer and he liked the visit so much that he wasn't originally, that was going to be the official visit he took, but now he's, told me he's going to come back for another visit, to see another game. So he wants to go see another game. And he told me this was the best visit he's ever been on at any campus. And he's been to Alabama, he's been to Virginia Tech numerous times. And you know what the atmosphere is like there at Virginia Tech. Great atmosphere for college football. And he said this was the best visit he's ever seen or he's ever been a part of. So I think, they're trending pretty well as well for him. So it kind of shows you and puts in perspective of, winning all the time it's a good thing and it keeps your positive recruiting momentum going, but not all the time is it everything that it means. Now, if you have a trend where, you're losing 3 or 4 games in a row, then it could have effect on a recruit. But in a one-game situation, it's not as big as people, would think or make it out to be.
Of course, that plus that versus a losing streak are two different things kind of entirely.
Yeah, it is. And the thing is, kids are very knowledgeable. I mean, every kid, I talked to, we did recruit reactions, they understood. And these are kids that are major FSU targets. They're very knowledgeable. The fact that FSU hasn't played a game in 3 weeks, they are starting a freshman quarterback. They know all this stuff. So they're very knowledgeable of that stuff that goes on. And they also know, just by playing, you lose players or you have to adjust your schedule and different things, and you're going to lose games. Now, none of that stuff, I think, really had a determination of them losing a game, but I think it contributed to it. But the point is, recruits understand, the dynamics of, sometimes things aren't perfect and you got to adjust to whatever you can adjust to, and you win some and you lose some, as Dennis said in our article. And I think it kind of shows you recruits' perspective compared to fans' perspective. As you ask FSU fans, life is over as soon as Saturday night. Life is over for FSU football. They're never going to win a game again if you listen to FSU fans. But recruits just have a different perspective and outcome, and looking at the big picture later on. And certainly, they're 0-2, but at the same time, they have these next 2 weeks. They could really turn this recruiting momentum, or this momentum with the team in general, around with, games against Wake Forest, and that sets up the big Miami game. And if you win those 2 games, they're back to where they were. So, as I told people, recruiting and football momentum is a week-by-week thing. Like 1 week you think you're unbeatable, and the next week you're the worst team on the field. And we've seen this before, but that doesn't mean they're going to do it again. They went 3-2 to start the year last year, but the point is, you got to base it on a full season, and I think recruits are very understanding in that as far as that aspect of football.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I'd say momentum-wise, I mean, this Saturday is important, but that game against Miami is going to be big. And as a matter of fact, I did want to ask you, Michael, because I honestly don't know, with that game being rescheduled, are there guys who are maybe planning on that Miami game as their visit who have rescheduled their visit to that Miami game, or most of them just kind of found different dates?
Well, I think majority of them that are major targets, they will all be there. Like the Jalen Waddles, the Justin Fields, all the major guys that were going to visit that game, for the most part. Obviously, Dax had to adjust his schedule. But for the most part, the ones that are really serious about FSU, they're going to make sure they're at that game. I mean, they're going to be there. They'll readjust their schedule. And the plans from what I've gotten was, the majority of those guys are supposed to be there. So, I mean, that's kind of how things are measuring up. And it's going to be a huge weekend. But that's why I say the next 2 weeks, because you have Wake Forest, and not saying you have to have a statement game, but a win in a decent, making a decent impression, this weekend leading up to that Miami game is pretty big for them. And, we're going to find out what they're made of, and I think they'll come ready to play, and I think they'll be ready. But the win the Wake Forest game kind of sets up for that Miami game.
Finally, before I let you run, Michael, I can't let you go away without giving us an update and #FieldsWatch 2K17. What's going on in the world of Justin Fields?
Well, Justin has visited, I think, Georgia 2 weeks in a row, I believe, to see games. And obviously they're playing really well, but at the same time, Jake Fromm seems to be further established himself as that guy that's going to be the starting quarterback. So you have to wonder how that's going to impact Justin as the more it becomes clear that he's going to be the guy, for them. So I think it's still where, I still think Georgia is the favorite. But like I said, he's going to visit. He's still taking these visits. And I just don't think he's completely, as good as Georgia's looked, I don't think he's completely sold on him fitting that offense yet, or that offense fitting him yet. I just don't think he's completely sold on that. Otherwise, I think he would already been committed. And, I think he's making sure of each place. And, I still think Georgia, is the favorite currently. But, we've seen this thing, change a few times. And I've always said, having him there for that Miami game is big. And assuming he follows through and goes to that visit, I think that's just going to build it up even more, and we got to wait a little longer. And I think Justin's handled this is about as good as you can. He wants to make sure he takes as many possible visits as he can to different places before he's completely ready. I mean, when he commits, it's going to be 100%. He knows. So I think that will tell us a lot what Justin does as far as being there for that FSU game.
Michael, thanks as always, my friend. Always appreciate it.
You got it, man.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're putting a bow on it. After this, it's Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio. These are, of course, very trying and divided times sometimes, not just in our country, but in the sports world. But I figured it would be great if we could find something that we all rally behind. And for the most part, that's hatred of the New England Patriots. But I think we can go beyond hatred of the New England Patriots, and we can just take a look at what the heck happened in Foxborough on Sunday. And I'm not talking about their game against the Houston Texans, which actually ended up being a decent affair. I'm talking about what happened in the concession stands. According to Fox News, Gillette Stadium ran out of bottled water. So instead, the venue decided to give cups of tap water. The only problem, they still sold them at a cost. They charged fans inside Gillette Stadium $4.50 for a glass of tap water with ice in it. Are you kidding me? The report said that while temperatures hit 86 degrees, fans requested cups of tap water. The concession stands are not equipped with complimentary water cups, so workers filled out soda cups. The Patriots acknowledged the issue in a statement to WBZ-TV. Quote, "We apologize. That should not have happened," team spokesperson Stacey James said. "It is the first time that I've ever heard that complaint here. We're looking into the matter to ensure that it doesn't happen again." Well, duh. Are you kidding me? Really? Charging people full price soda cup for water at a football game? Could you imagine if that happened in the South? I mean, let's face it. We've got 3 teams in this state. They're all outdoor stadiums. Nobody's got a dome. I've been to season openers in Jacksonville. I know you've probably been to them in Tampa and Miami. They're hot. They're really hot. Could you imagine if they ran out of bottled water, which, by the way, I've been to games where that's happened, and instead it was, full price, cup of water, soda can. It's in a souvenir cup, though, so it's fine. Could you even imagine the outrage down here? Much less a place where, it was 86 and it was really hot. The heat index is 95. Yeah, good luck with that. Just, wow. I don't even know where to go with that. And especially in a time where, Atlanta's opened the shiny new stadium, and it's basically $3 for everything, and you're going to charge people that for water? Come on. Give me a break. I get it. You're the franchise that everybody talks about and everybody seems to look over, but are you kidding me? We're really going to do that to your fans, your own fans? That's crazy. Anyway, we got to run. It's my thanks to Kelly Quinlan, my thanks to Mr. Michael Langston, and my thanks to you guys for listening. We'll be back tomorrow with our picks, Lucky 7, some breakdowns. Mike and Mike's up next on 97.9 ESPN Radio.
WarChant.com is the ultimate inside source for FSU football and recruiting. And now you can get in on the action for free for an entire month. WarChant.com is offering a risk-free 30-day trial subscription. Get full access to the #1 website covering the Seminoles just by entering the promo code WarChant30. That's WarChant30. Sign up and get in on the world's most active FSU message boards. Receive breaking news, stories from our award-winning staff, plus get exclusive interviews and videos. Just enter the promo code WarChant30. WarChant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source.
Hey, thanks for downloading today's show. If you haven't already, why don't you rate and subscribe us? We certainly do appreciate it, and of course, we appreciate you listening anyway, so just go ahead and click that right there. You know you want to. Come on. Come on. Thanks again for letting us do the show. We love giving you all the football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, all year round. Not just football season, not just spring practice, but hopefully giving you the freshest and newest FSU content every day. Thanks, guys.